वर्डिंग्स तुम लोग देख लो और कैलकुलेशंस में आई गेस रोहेल या अली वगैरह मुझे असिस्ट कर देंगे. सो ऑलराइट, वर्डिंग्स प्लीज देख लेना. जस्ट गिव मी अ सेकंड, मैं स्टाइलिस की स्ट्रेंथ को थोड़ा सा सही कर दूं. ऑलराइट, तो इन द क्वेश्चन इट सेज, वर्डिंग्स प्लीज रीड कर लेना. मैं थोड़ा जूम इन कर दूं. So in the question it says your transformer has 5000 turns on the primary coil. Number of turns in the primary is given. It is used to convert a main supply of 230 volts RMS. So the voltage in the primary is given 230 volts, and this is the RMS value. And you are converting it into an alternating voltage having a peak value of 9 volts. So the output voltage is also given to you, but this is the peak value. And the question is asking you to figure out the number of turns on the secondary coil. So basically, NS find out करना है. So if you recall the formula for the transformers, हमने ये किया था, NP upon NS is equal to VP upon VS. Before we start with the working, I'm sure you can appreciate कि मैं numbers को directly plug in नहीं कर सकता. Why? Because one value is given as RMS value, whereas the other value is given to you as peak value. So for a consistent approach, I need to convert any one of the two. So if I convert the peak value into RMS, then the value becomes 9 upon under root 2. And this becomes the RMS value. Okay, now I can use this value to proceed on with the working. Where the choice is yours. You can either convert the peak value into RMS, or alternately, you could have multiplied this answer by under root 2 as well. That's your choice. And you could have converted this value into peak value. Either of the two working, जो भी सही लगता है. सही, तो फॉर्मूला अप्लाई मैं कर लेता हूँ. नंबर्स अवेलेबल हैं. तो प्राइमरी के नंबर ऑफ टर्न्स 5000, सेकेंडरी के नंबर ऑफ टर्न्स फिगर आउट करने हैं. I'll keep the primary voltage as 230, and I've converted the secondary voltage by writing it down as 9 upon under root 2. I think सॉल्व कर लेना, आपके पास नंबर ऑफ टर्न्स का आंसर आई बिलीव 140 आ जाएगा. ठीक है, मैंने राउंड ऑफ कर दिया है जो अली ने सजेस्ट किया. नेक्स्ट वाला क्वेश्चन. The first part में they're just asking you the meaning of the term RMS. I guess वो तो आप wordings follow कर लेना, मैंने पहले से लिख लिए हैं. So that was the standard definition that we did in the last class. In part B, they have given us a standard equation. Read आप लोग कर लो. मैं second equation को लिख लूं पहले. So then I can continue further. So this is the standard equation that is provided to you. And if you recall from the last class, the standard equation that we wrote down for alternating currents was in this form. V is equal to V naught sin omega t. If you make a comparison, I guess एक recognition हो जाती है which number goes with what value. In the first part, they are asking us for the peak value. So on comparison, the peak value turns out to be 220. Direct हो जाएगा ना. Second part में they are asking you for the RMS value. So the RMS value based on the formula should be the peak value divided by under root 2. मैं solve नहीं कर रहा. I might as well would just leave it in this form. Next part में they are asking you to calculate the frequency. So remember, omega is equal to 2 pi f. If you simplify, omega is 120 pi. So 120 pi is equal to 2 pi f, and the value of frequency works out to be 60 hertz. Next part में मैं थोड़ा कोशिश करके जल्दी करता जा रहा हूँ। सी पार्ट के अंदर दे आर आस्किंग अस the alternating voltage is applied across a resistor such that the mean power is 1.5 kilowatt. Calculate the resistance. So from last class, remember, mean power is the same thing as RMS power. And the formula for RMS power was V RMS square upon R. Okay, I'm basically using the basic power formula, V square upon R. So the mean power is the same thing as the RMS power. That is V RMS square upon R. Power is 1.5 kilowatts. We just worked out the value of voltage, which was 220 divided by under root 2. And the value of the resistance can be worked out. मेरी स्क्रीन पे 16 आ रहा है. थैंक यू अली. नेक्स्ट वाला देख लो यार. कुछ इन बिटवीन पूछना हो ना तो प्लीज मुझे सजेस्ट कर देना. This is one theory part which is quite frequently asked as well. So have a look at this question. It says the variation with time of the current in a resistor is shown in figure 6.1. So it's a graph of current against time. The variation of current with time is sinusoidal. The question is saying, explain why, although the current is not in one direction only, so the direction of the current keeps changing. You are supposed to explain why power is still getting converted into the resistor. The question is asking you, explain why, although the current doesn't remain in one direction, how come still power is getting formed into the resistor? So how would we approach a question like this? इसकी wording जरा carefully देख लो. Your statement should be something along these lines. Although mean current is 0, comma. The reason I've written mean current is 0 is because the positive section and the negative section will cancel out each other. Hence, we can rightfully say that the mean current is 0. So although mean current is 0, power depends on the square of the current. Which is always positive. Black वाली terms को जरा carefully देख लो. Hence, power is produced. So you know what the question was asking you was, how come the direction of the current keeps on changing, sometimes positive, sometimes negative? How come still power is getting produced in the resistor? So your answer should be something along these lines, that yes, although mean current is 0 because the positive and the negative kind of cancels out, power depends on the square of the current based on the formula P is equal to I square R, which will always be positive. So yes, current is both positive as well as negative, but the square of the current is always going to be positive. Hence, you would expect power to be produced inside the resistor. ठीक है, so the question was कि current positive negative दोनों हो रहा है. How come still power is getting produced? ठीक है, so yes, the current is positive and negative, making the mean value of current to be 0. But the fact that power does not depend on current, rather power depends on the square of the current. So अगर आप current का square करोगे, you'll always get a positive value. And that implies as to why power is always getting produced in the resistor. Okay, next part में they're asking us to calculate how much is going to be the average power converted in the resistor divided by the maximum power converted in the resistor. So basically, from the wording of the question, average power refers to mean power or the RMS power, and maximum power refers to peak power. So इसका रेशियो निकालना है. जरा केयरफुली देखिएगा मैं किस तरह लिख रहा हूँ. RMS value of power can be written as follows. Peak power can be written as follows. सिंबल जरा प्लीज देख लेना. अब चेंज करता हूं. So in place of IRMS, I can replace the term I naught upon under root 2 square. So this is what I end up with. And if you cancel out the terms and simplify the working, you will get the final answer as 1:2. ठीक है. और अगर आपको नोट्स में से याद हो ना, तो you probably remember that we did this in the last class. Sorry, that the RMS power or the mean power is always 50% of the peak power, and that is why the ratio is coming out to be 1:2. Okay, next wala question. 3 questions exactly और कराने और फिर आगे थ्योरी पे मूव करूं. रीड आप लोग कर लो. Meanwhile, I'll just make a compatibility between the standard equation and the given equation. Statements आप लोग पढ़ लो. So first part में they are again asking you to work out the frequency. So omega is equal to 2 pi f. Omega is 380. मैं solve नहीं कर रहा. I don't think I'll need it. This would do for the time being at least. The second part में RMS current निकालना है. So apply the formula. Peak value divided by under root 2. So that will be 9.1 9.9 divided by under root 2. I'll leave it as it is. Solve फिर आप लोग बाद में कर लेना. Last part में to prevent overheating, the mean power must not be greater than 400 watts. And they're asking you to calculate the resistance. Okay, so again, start with the idea that mean power is equal to RMS power, which can be given by the formula I RMS square into R. Power is 400. RMS value of current is calculated above. This is the value. Simplify आप कर लेना. R का रिजल्ट आ जाएगा. हाँ यार, अली देखना कितना लिखूं. 8.2. थैंक यू. प्रोसीड कर रहा हूं. Is 8.2 Ali the answer for the part B? ठीक है यार, thank you. While you guys are reading, I'll just highlight the relevant values. Frequency is 50. There is a time labeled as T1 on the x-axis. So first part में यार they are asking us to calculate T1 कितना होगा. So from the graph, T1 is 1.5 times capital T, where capital T is the time period. I've marked the time period on the diagram. Okay, so frequency is given as 50. This will lead to a time period of 20 milliseconds. Sorry, yaar. So T1 will be 1.5 times of 20 milliseconds. ठीक है, so मैंने time period निकाल लिया, and T1 in the diagram was corresponding to 1.5 times, because it was 1.5 cycle, 1.5 times the time period. Next part में they are asking us to figure out the peak voltage. Graph से check करना. It appears to be pretty much close to 17 volts. Next part where they are asking us to calculate the RMS value. So that will be 17 divided by under root of 2. Proceed करते जा रहा हूँ. Next part where they are asking us to calculate the mean value. ठीक है, so since it's a sine graph, लिख देता हूँ. So you would expect the positive and the negative values to cancel out each other. I'll just highlight those values in the diagram, तो आप follow कर लोगे ना. So the positive value and the negative value cancels out. Sine graph है ना. So therefore the mean value turns out to be 0 volts. मैंने plus minus diagram पे लिख दिया है. Yes, mean value is actually the average or the mean position, बिल्कुल. So since the graph is symmetrical about the x-axis, जितना ऊपर है उतना नीचे है, so the mean value turns out to be 0. Last part में, the value of the resistor is given, and they are asking you to calculate the mean power. ठीक है, same calculation as before. So mean power is the same thing as RMS power. In this case, that will be equal to V RMS square upon R. So based on the calculations done above, this will be the final result. G Ali. Acha, while I'm writing down this answer, thank you. Last two questions are completely different. तो ये वाले जरा specifically देख लेना. तो मैं पहले last वाला करा दूं, and then I'll move on to the second last question. They've actually asked similar questions on numerous occasions. So इनको जरा carefully देख लेना. तो मैं last और second last one go में करा देता हूं. They are both roughly the same. तो last वाला पहले देख लो. So in the question, there is a magnetic field whose strength is given to you, so and so Tesla. There is a wire whose length is given, and the angle is also given. So a wire is positioned in a magnetic field. The length of the wire is provided to you, and the angle at which the wire is placed is also given to you. First part where they're asking us to calculate how much is going to be the force on the wire due to a current of 5.4 amperes. Now, this part of the question does not deal with alternating currents, at least not as yet. because the calculation of force is basically based on the previous topics. If you recall, तो previous topics की basis पे force का formula बन जाएगा. Originally ये formula होता था, if you remember, BIL. This was the formula for maximum force. But in this case, it should be BIL sine of theta. ठीक है, sin theta इसलिए because I'll have to resolve to work out the vertical component. मैंने component draw नहीं किया because ज़रूरत नहीं है. But nonetheless, you can appreciate and recognize that since the conductor is not at right angles, तो इसलिए मुझे sin theta वाले component को involve करना पड़ा है. So the value should turn out to be in this particular scenario. Field strength is provided to you right at the top. The value of current which is constant. So अभी RMS का कोई use नहीं है. Then the value of the length. And finally sine of theta. So this is the force exerted on this current carrying wire. कितना बन रहा है मैं लिख लूं? Once अली का आंसर आ जाए. जब मैं सेकंड वाला पार्ट रीड करूंगा ना, तो उसमें you will see that the question is going to now direct itself towards the idea of alternating currents. So this answer is 3.7 times 10 to the power of minus 4 newtons. Now in the second part, the question says, the current is now changed. Thoda carefully read karna. And from direct current, it changes to alternating current. Okay, so the direction of the current will keep on switching. And the RMS value is given to you as the 1.7. Okay, so before I continue, the peak current will become 1.7 times under root 2. Now the question is saying, determine the total variation in the force on the wire due to alternating current. I'm sure you would agree that due to alternating current, the direction of current changes. Therefore, the direction of force also changes. Hence, they are asking us, you are supposed to calculate how much is going to be the total variation. So, if you look at the wordings of the question, the reason why they are saying determine the total variation is because as the direction of the current changes, the direction of the force also changes. Okay, hence the term total variation. अच्छा, अब कैसे calculate करेंगे? So I'll apply the same formula जो मैंने ऊपर लिखा हुआ था. And तकरीबन most of the values will remain the same with the exception of a few things. So as far as B is concerned, I can just copy down the value from the top. Now, as far as current is concerned, this is where the trick is. मैं current के साथ plus minus लिख रहा हूँ. आप appreciate करेंगे क्यों लिख रहा हूँ in a moment. And I've converted the RMS value into peak value to get the maximum force by multiplying it by under root 2. That value which is written with the black marker, that needs to be understood. Let me just continue with the working. And then I'll explain you कि significance क्या है. Everything written with the red marker is an extension from the previous part. But जो black वाले marker से लिखा है ना, इसमें आपको दो चीजें recognize होनी चाहिए. Plus minus क्यों लिखा है? एक इसकी justification. And why have I multiplied it by under root 2? इसकी justification. I'm sure you would appreciate. Under root 2 से multiply किया ताकि current की value को maximum कर सकूं. तो force मेरे पास maximum हो जाएगा. ठीक है, तो I've multiplied the value by under root 2 ताकि फोर्स की मैक्सिमम वैल्यू जनरेट हो सके, बिकॉज द क्वेश्चन वाज आस्किंग मी टू obtain the total variation in the force. अच्छा, प्लस माइनस इसलिए लिखा because the nature of the current was alternating. The current is going to flow in one direction, then the current is going to flow in the other direction. उसको शो करने के लिए मैंने प्लस माइनस लिख दिया. तो अगर आप कैलकुलेट करोगे ना अपना पूरा आंसर, जस्ट टू सी के कितना अमाउंट बनेगा, मेरा आंसर ये बनेगा प्लस माइनस, अगर मुझे पूरी कैलकुलेशन मिल जाए ना अली. ओके, सो दिस इज व्हाट आई एम गेटिंग. अब if you look at this answer, what this answer is telling you is that the force increases and decreases by an amount of 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 4 newtons. If the question was asking us how much is going to be the total variation in the force, I am sure मैं ऐसे करके लिख सकता हूँ. It's pretty simple to understand कि मैंने 2 से क्यों मल्टीप्लाई किया, है ना? Because if I say that the force increases and decreases because of the plus and the minus sign, if the force increases and decreases by an amount of 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 4, then the total variation in the force, if you carefully analyze the wording, then the total variation can be calculated by multiplying the individual answer with 2, and hence that gives us the final answer of 3.2 times 10 to the power of minus 4. ठीक है, सो एक्चुअली हमने दो चीजें करी हैं. कौन सी दो चीजें करी हैं? बेस्ड ऑन द क्वेश्चन, I took care of the wording alternating and I wrote a plus minus sign. See, सलमान, मैं आपको अभी एक सेकेंड सुलेमान आंसर दे देता हूँ. एक सेकेंड. So based on the wording alternating, I took care of the alternating current by recognizing it with a plus and minus sign, and I converted the RMS value into peak value by multiplying it by under root 2 so as to get the maximum force. See, दो changes करे थे. अब Suleiman is saying, do we have to show the sign in the final answer? Suleiman, if you write down the final answer like the way I have written, जिसको मैं highlight कर रहा हूँ, अगर तुम 3.2 times 10 to the power of minus 4 करके लिखते हो ना, तो फिर प्लस माइनस लगाने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है, because that plus and the minus has been taken care of, है ना? और काफी स्टूडेंट्स इस तरह से आंसर देते हैं जैसे मैं अब हाईलाइट कर रहा हूँ. तो इफ यू गो फॉर दिस ऑप्शन, तो प्लस माइनस लिख देना. ठीक है, सो इफ यू हैव मल्टीप्लाइड इट बाय 2 like the way I did in the last part, then there is no point in writing a plus minus sign. However, if you want to give the answer like the way I have highlighted in the box, तो फिर plus minus लिख देना. See? So basically the same question can be answered in two different ways. Either you can say the force varies by an amount plus minus 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 4. That's one way of suggesting the answer. And a better way of suggesting the answer would be that the total variation in the force is 3.2 times 10 to the power of minus 4. So as long as you are using the final quoted value, 3.2 times 10 to the power of minus 4, you don't need to insert the plus or the minus sign. All right. As I said, इससे एक similar question ऊपर है. ये भी देख लेते हैं. In fact, the same question actually got repeated. The same question, ye wala. They repeated the exact same question twice in your exams. अब जरा wordings देख लो. It says a horseshoe magnet. This is also a very similar question, especially the second part or the third part rather. A horseshoe magnet is placed on a balance. A stiff metal wire is clamped horizontally between the poles as illustrated. The magnetic flux density in between the poles of the magnet is uniform, so on and so forth. मेरे relevant चीजें ये हैं that the length of the wire is given to us. When the current is switched on, the reading on the balance increases by 2.4 grams. And the value of the current for the time being is given to us as 5.6 amperes. So at least for the first part, the current is not an alternating current. अभी मुझे AC supply की कोई theory at least अभी first part में use नहीं करनी है. The question is asking you, state and explain the direction of force on the wire due to the current. अब इसका आंसर किस तरह से देंगे? इसको जरा केयरफुली देख लेना कि जस्ट केयरफुली देख लेना कि मैंने वर्डिंग्स कैसे लिखी है. Balance reading increases implies that the wire must be exerting a downward force on the balance. Hence, based on third law, Newton's third law, the balance must exert an upward force on the wire. अब मैंने जो ब्लू वाले मार्कर से वर्डिंग्स को हाईलाइट किया है ना, वो जरा प्लीज देख लो और पूरा रीड कर लो. थोड़ा सा जूम इन कर दूं, आपके लिए थोड़ा कन्वीनियंट हो जाएगा. You can read the question, what the question was saying, and just carefully see what was the wording of the question. I want you to particularly pay attention towards the terminology which I'm highlighting. Remember Newton's third law, to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. ठीक है, I'm sure you are all aware of Newton's third law. O levels में भी किया था, AS में भी किया था. So अगर आप पूरी wordings को पढ़ लो, तो hopefully you'll be able to get the hang of it कि मैंने answer की wordings को इस तरह से क्यों frame up किया है for 3 marks. ठीक है ना? So it says state and explain. So take your time, just quickly read through it. ठीक है guys, मैं proceed करूं. I'm hoping कि आपने statements की formulation से understand कर लिया होगा. ठीक है, मैं read फिर भी कर देता हूं. Balance reading increases implies that the wire must be exerting a downward force on the balance. Hence, based on third law, Newton's third law, that is, the balance must exert an upward force on the wire. But as I said, first part में alternating currents की कोई logic अभी नहीं लग रही है, at least for the time being. So now in the second part, it says, calculate the magnitude of magnetic flux density. So you are expected कि अब आपको B की value find out करनी है. So once again the same formula, F is equal to BIL. Now notice the fact I don't need any sin theta or anything in this case. ठीक है ना, बिकॉज कोई एंगल मेंशन नहीं है, सो मैं sin थीटा वगैरह को नहीं लिख रहा, बिकॉज आई एम श्योर यू कैन सी दे हैव मेंशन द टर्म परपेंडिकुलर. ठीक है, नॉर्मल लिखा हुआ है. अच्छा, अली ने मेरे लिए एक काम कर दिया है. आपको बैलेंस रीडिंग गिवन है ग्राम्स के अंदर. सो पहले आप इसको फोर्स में कन्वर्ट करना. grams into kilograms and multiplied by 9.81 to get me the force. ये एज अ सेपरेट नोटेशन कर लीजिएगा. मेरे पास फोर्स का आंसर मेरी स्क्रीन पे अपीयर हो रहा है 0.0235. परफेक्ट. ऑलराइट, बी आपको फाइंड करना है. करंट आपको डायग्राम पे गिवन था. लेंथ आपको क्वेश्चन में मेंशन्ड है. नंबर्स को जरा टॉप से देख लेना. तो बी का आंसर जो मेरी स्क्रीन पे आ रहा है, दैट इज अपीयरिंग टू बी 0.066 टेस्ला. Now in the next part, the question further goes on to say, ये करा के फिर क्वांटम फिजिक्स स्टार्ट कराता हूँ. अब in the next part, you will yourself recognize that the question brings the idea of alternating current into use. So the terms which I'm highlighting indicates that the direct current has now been switched to alternating current. And the question is again asking you the same thing, that you are supposed to determine the variation uh, of the reading. ठीक है, technically same question here. So the two changes which I need to do, let's break down the working. I'm using the same formula, F is equal to BIL. Uh, B will remain the same. करंट मुझे स्विच करके प्लस माइनस भी लगा रहा हूं. रेड वाले को दोबारा देख लो. And 5.6 needs to be multiplied by under root 2 as well. ठीक है, so the terms which are of relevance for me, वो मैंने रेड वाले मार्कर से लिखे हैं. प्लस माइनस टू सिग्निफाई ऑल्टरनेटिंग करंट, अंडर रूट 2 से मल्टीप्लाई किया to get the peak value. Everything else stays exactly the same. So the answer which I'm getting for the time being, जी मैं इंतजार कर रहा हूँ. अली जैसे ही लिखता है ना, तो फिर मैं आगे प्रोसीड करूँ. ओके, सो फोर्स का आंसर ये आ गया. अब आई नीड टू कन्वर्ट फोर्स इनटू मास. So force is divided by 9.81. This gives me mass in kilograms and multiplied by 1000 to give me mass in grams. 3.36. 3.4 कर देता हूँ यार. तो जो मेरे पास आंसर आया ना, जिसको मैं हाईलाइट कर रहा हूँ विद द ग्रीन कलर्ड मार्कर, Based on this, I should write down my final answer as follows. Hence, total variation okay, so there are two different ways of giving the answer. Some students end up giving the answer which I've highlighted with the green marker, plus minus 3.4. That's one way of giving the answer. और अगर आप multiply by 2 करके ज़रा ज़्यादा बेहतर तरीके से लिखोगे, then your final answer should be that the total variation in the balance reading amounts to 6.8 grams. ठीक है guys, तो ये questions मुझे कराने थे. I'm done with that.